evidence is building that Tutankhamun's burial in his unusually small tomb was almost cobbled together. Peculiarities that were apparent to Howard Carter as he continued to remove the objects from the area of the tomb he'd found so far. But the burial chamber itself, the tomb's holiest of holies, had not yet been found. Or so Carter claimed. He was sure another chamber lay sealed behind this wall, protected by two guardian statues. But he said he didn't break through it until he got permission from the Egyptian authorities. But Lord Carnarvon, who was Carter's sponsor and business partner, seems to have admitted in a newspaper article he never actually ended up publishing that they did have a sneaky peek through the wall into the next chamber before they'd got permission from the authorities, and that's why Carter could never admit it. And this is the room they're talking about. This was the antechamber here. This wall was completely blocked up here, bricks and mortar, and beyond it lay Tutankhamun's burial chamber. They knocked a small hole through the bottom of the wall. By the time this photo was taken, Carter had cunningly hidden it with a wicker bowl. Now, it's believed that Carter, Lord Carnarvon, and Carnarvon's daughter, Lady Evelyn, squeezed through the little hole into the burial chamber on the very first night they entered the tomb. Really, who can blame them? They came in here, went through the tiny hole, then dropped down into the burial chamber, and what they found was extraordinary. A giant gilded box filled this entire space, inside of which was Tutankhamun's sarcophagus. They had just made the first discovery of an undisturbed Egyptian pharaoh's burial site in history. As they crawled around the edge of this room with their electric torches, they shined them up on the walls and they saw the first artwork they'd seen in the tomb. But here were more abnormalities with the burial. There were no carved decorations, and the painting was relatively simple. Not what you'd expect in a pharaoh's tomb. Some of them aren't even properly finished, which is weird given the extraordinary care and attention that the artisans lavished on these paintings and tombs. Check this out. There are black lines around all of the penises on the baboons, except for this one here. Someone was in a hurry. In 2009, researchers made an ultra-high resolution scan of this artwork to allow it to be studied in minute detail. The same team have now moved on to another tomb in the Valley of the Kings, that belonging to Seti I. Raksha has gone to visit them to find out how these two tombs compare.
The vast tomb of Seti I is the longest and deepest in the Valley of the Kings. It's almost 8 times the size of Tut's.
Wow!
Burrowing an incredible 137 meters into the mountainside. Alia Ishmael and her team have just begun 3D scanning every inch of the tomb. I'm the first person to see their work.
So what are you doing here? It looks all very high-tech. So basically, you see this red beam that's on the wall. It moves over the surface, taking the shape of the surface through the cameras. And then through that video, we can actually obtain a 3D model. So it kind of spits it out, and there's this like perfect 3D model of this entire tomb. Yeah.
I want to know how the decoration of Seti's tomb compares to Tut's, and what it reveals about the mysterious circumstances of the young pharaoh's burial. Alia has invited me to her 3D scan centre to see their results.
It's a very cool office you've got here. This is the data from Seti I. You can see right away how intricate the details are, and you can see the outlines of every single figure. It's very beautiful and stylized and very clean to look at. Yes, you can see so much of the details that you wouldn't be able to see with your naked eye in the tomb.
The amazing method allows the paint to be electronically stripped from the wall, exposing the plaster underneath. Seti's plaster is beautifully smooth and intricately carved. But under the paint in Tut's tomb, it's uncarved, rough and shoddy.
Right away, you can tell, like, this is definitely Seti. And when you look at Tutankhamun, it was done very quickly, not enough time, not enough effort.
These high-resolution images even expose light impressions, left in the plaster by the artist's brushes as they painted Tut's tomb. This proves the plaster hadn't dried out before it was painted.
I was quite taken aback when I walked into Seti's tomb because the detail is phenomenal. It's quite exquisite. Absolutely, and it's like Tutankhamun is almost like child's play compared to the master in Seti. You know, and you can imagine like how many people have worked on this tomb as opposed to Tutankhamun. It was a rushed job.
And that's not all. There are more peculiarities.
When you enter, you see all this mold on the wall. You see how it's growing. Yeah. All these like really dark brown dots everywhere. So that's mold. Yes.
This mould isn't seen in any other royal tomb. It only grows in damp conditions, indicating the paint was still wet when Tut was sealed in his tomb. So the decoration must have taken place in the last few days before his burial.
One could only think of one thing. Tutankhamun's burial was very much rushed. It's not like he just died young, but rather it seemed that someone really wanted this tomb to be closed right away. Someone wanted Tutankhamun to be buried quickly.
So many things just don't add up. A botched mummification, a small tomb, burial treasures not for him, and now last-minute artwork.
I can't believe that all of these anomalies are down to the fact that Tut died very young, very suddenly. I think it was also to do with the fact that he was childless. I think somebody was in a rush to bury his body because they were in a rush to take the crown.
Despite Tut's burial here in the Valley of the Kings appearing rushed, the dehydration part of his mummification would have taken up to 40 days. After which, his body would have been wrapped in the famous mummy's bandages. He was now ready to be placed in his tomb, along with the thousands of burial items that had been gathered together. A process that over 3,000 years later was happening in reverse, as Howard Carter carefully removed those same items from Tut's tomb. All of those fragile, priceless treasures were carefully lifted out of Tutankhamun's tomb just down there, carried all the way up here and taken to the tomb just up there. Carter had been allowed to use Seti II's tomb as a conservation lab. The parade of objects from Tutankhamun's tomb up through the valley was an uncanny echo of what had gone on right here over 3,000 years before. In Tut's burial chamber, there's a painting of his funeral procession, his mummified body being pulled to his tomb on a sled. But this captures only one element of the elaborate ceremony. Raksha has gone to investigate what happened around 3 days before Tutankhamun was finally sealed into his tomb.
I'm heading to the tomb of Ramosa, a powerful noble who lived a few decades before Tutankhamun.
The reason why I'm here is because there's a beautiful frieze at the back that shows us what funerals were like in ancient Egypt.
Ramosa was a vizier, second in command to the pharaoh. His funeral procession depicted here would have been similar to Tutankhamun's.
So right at the top you can see these golden shrines being pulled on by a sled. And then you can see this general funeral procession going past here. You have these individuals carrying the burial goods and boxes of goods not too dissimilar to the ones that Tutankhamun had his clothes in. And as we carry on, we have these wonderful scenes of mourning and grieving. These women, they've got their hands up to the sky and they're wailing. It's all very epic.
The grieving women would also crouch down and sprinkle dust on their heads.
As with all funerals, there's a wake. And you can see at the top, there's some kind of party where there would have been drinking and dancing and music. And who better to show us what took place than the star of Strictly, John Sargent.
Oh dear, I thought my television dancing days were over, but maybe I'll prove better at dancing like an Egyptian than dancing the paso doble. My partner this time is expert 3D scanner Alia Ishmael, a keen dancer who's researched ancient Egyptian dance. Oh, that's good.
In funerary processions in ancient Egypt, just like that of Tutankhamun's and any other pharaoh, they would have had what we call the mu dancers.
Mu dancers wore strange headdresses made of papyrus reeds.
Their role is very important in the procession. They help the deceased soul move from this world to the next.
So do we know what moves they made, these mu dancers?
I would love to show you how they're done, but to do that, shouldn't we change into the right outfit first?
The right outfit, okay. All right. Alia has used tomb paintings to work out the mu dancers' moves. What do you think, eh? Pretty good, eh? Now look, what about me doing it? Oh, can I start?
Yes, please start.
What about this one?
No, Joe, no.
What's wrong with that?
No, that's not how we do it.
What do we do?
The mu dancers, they would have had movements. If you notice, the hands would have been more like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would have had
It's not very...
You feel like it's a bit of a sway.
Which way are we swaying?
Just go, bum, bum. They look like they are swaying, sway.
I'm losing my voice.
Huh?
It's too exciting.
Remember, hands.
Well, this is fine for a funeral, but a bit dull. I'm ready for something more lively.
Like this one here.
Oh, right.
See it? Not too easy to do, but we can try.
Okay, put your leg up here.
Yeah, leg in the air. Let me show you. So basically,
Yeah.
I would imagine it like that. So you'd be like, ha, and then you go down, sort of, It's like you're happy, ha.
You're happy.
Go down.
Happy.
Down.
That's good, isn't it?
It's fun, right? Whoa!
Wow. Wow, I think I'm getting good at this.
3, 2, 1.